Ever since the night her father was shot dead, Clara Reeves carried nothing but hate in her heart. Everyone in Silver Creek knew who did it: Jake Hollow, her childhood love, the boy who once promised to protect her forever. The sheriff found Jake's gun near the barn, his fingerprints on the trigger. The town whispered his name like poison, and Clara's heart turned to ice. She remembered his smile, his laughter, and the way he used to bring her wildflowers, all tainted now by blood. Years passed, but every sunrise reminded her of that night, her father's lifeless eyes, the echo of a gunshot, and Jake's shadow disappearing into the dark. Clara swore she'd never forgive him. Never love again. Kia Chehoji next part romantic tone main Likanya thriller/suspense style main. 8 long years later, Silver Creek had changed, but Clara's hatred hadn't. She ran her father's old store now, quiet and alone, never letting anyone close. Then one dusty afternoon, a rider appeared at the edge of town. His hat was low, coat torn, and dust clung to him like old sins. When he stepped down from the horse, Clara's heart froze. It was Jake Hollow. The townsfolk stopped and stared. Whispers spread like wildfire, "He's back, after all these years." Jake didn't look like the boy she remembered. His eyes were colder, his face lined with pain. He walked straight to Clara's porch and said softly, "Clara, I didn't kill your father." Her voice trembled with rage. "Don't you dare say his name." Jake nodded slowly, pain flickering in his eyes. "You deserve to know the truth." But Clara turned away, tears burning her eyes. "The truth died with my father, and so did you." That night, the town was wrapped in silence when the saloon doors burst open. A wounded man stumbled in, clothes torn, blood staining his sleeve. His name, they said, was Ryder Black, an outlaw wanted across 3 states. He crashed onto a table, gasping for breath. The bartender froze. Clara, who was there for supplies, stepped back as his dark eyes met hers. "You look just like your pa," he muttered, voice rough as gravel. Clara's heart skipped. "You knew my father?" Ryder gave a bitter smile. "Knew him, and knew who really shot him too." Before she could ask more, he coughed hard, his body trembling. "The sheriff, he framed the boy. Hollow didn't do it." The room went still. Clara stared at him, stunned. "What are you saying?" But Ryder's head fell forward onto the table unconscious before another word escaped. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains, and for the first time in years, Clara felt doubt crawl into her heart. Could it be Jake was innocent? Next morning, Clara couldn't sleep. Ryder Black's broken words kept echoing in her head: "The sheriff framed the boy." She needed answers. The outlaw had been locked in the Silver Creek jail, half dead and coughing. Clara hesitated outside the cell door, heart pounding. The sheriff wasn't around, only the deputy snored in the corner. Ryder lifted his head weakly when he saw her. "You came," he rasped. "Tell me what you meant last night," Clara whispered. "Tell me the truth about my father." He gave a dry laugh that turned into a cough. "Your pa, he found gold under his land. The sheriff wanted it, but your old man wouldn't sell." Clara's eyes widened. "So the sheriff shot him. Blamed the Hollow boy. Said he found the gun near the barn, but it was planted." Clara staggered back, her breath catching. Everything she'd believed, every ounce of hate, started to crumble. Ryder leaned closer, whispering his last words before the darkness took him again. "Find the map, your pa kept proof, buried truth don't stay buried long." Clara left the jail trembling. For the first time, she didn't know whether to cry or to hope. Clara spent the whole night searching through the dust and memories of her father's old house. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a whisper from the past. Ryder's words kept circling in her mind: "Find the map." She opened the wooden chest at the foot of her father's bed, the one she'd never dared touch since his death. Inside were old letters, a broken pocket watch, and a folded piece of parchment wrapped in cloth. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was a map, marked with red ink, showing the outline of her father's land and a gold vein running straight beneath the sheriff's ranch. Her heart froze. Ryder hadn't lied. The sheriff had killed her father for greed, and Jake had been nothing but a scapegoat. Tears blurred her eyes as guilt washed over her. All these years, she'd hated the only man who ever truly loved her. Clutching the map, Clara whispered into the quiet room, "Oh, Jake, what have I done?" The next morning, she saddled her horse. Dust swirled around her boots as she rode toward the river where Jake always used to wait. It was time to face him, and to tell him everything. The river glimmered under the pale morning sun as Clara rode down the dusty trail. Her heart pounded with every step her horse took. In her saddlebag lay the old map, proof of Jake's innocence and her unbearable guilt. By the riverbank, Jake Hollow stood alone, hat pulled low, a duffel slung over his shoulder. He looked like a man ready to disappear forever. "Jake!" Clara called, her voice cracking. He turned slowly, surprise flickering in his tired eyes. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly. Clara dismounted, holding out the map with trembling hands. "You didn't kill my father. The sheriff did. He wanted the gold under our land, and he blamed you." Jake's jaw tightened, pain shadowing his face. "Took you 8 years to believe me." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "I was blind, Jake. I wanted someone to hate, and you were the only one left to blame." For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at the river. Then he sighed. "Hate's heavy, Clara. It breaks you before you even notice." She stepped closer, voice barely a whisper. "Can you ever forgive me?" Jake looked at her then, really looked, and though hurt still lingered in his eyes, a flicker of warmth returned. "Maybe," he said softly, "but some things take time." Before Clara could say another word, the sound of hooves thundered through the canyon. She turned. Sheriff Dugan rode toward them, rifle glinting in the sun, dust spiraling behind his horse. "Well, ain't this a sweet sight?" he sneered, aiming his gun. "The liar and the fool girl who believes him." Jake stepped in front of Clara, his hand already near his holster. "It's over, Dugan. We know everything. The gold, the murder, all of it." The sheriff laughed coldly. "You think anyone's gonna believe 2 ghosts from the past?" Clara's voice shook but didn't break. "I found my father's map. It's over, Sheriff." For a split second, the world stood still, wind rustling, the river whispering below. Then the sheriff pulled the trigger. A single shot echoed through the valley. Jake spun and fired back faster than lightning. Both men stumbled, the sheriff clutching his chest, collapsing into the dust. Clara rushed to Jake, heart pounding. A thin line of blood traced his arm, but he smiled weakly. "Guess I'm still faster than the law." The sheriff's badge rolled into the dirt beside him, shining in the morning sun, a symbol of lies finally buried. Clara fell to her knees, trembling, as the truth and justice finally came home. The sun rose slowly over Silver Creek, painting the sky in soft gold. The night's violence had ended, leaving behind the silence of truth. The sheriff was gone, and the weight that haunted Clara's heart for 8 long years finally lifted. Jake sat by the riverbank, his arm bandaged, watching the water flow. Clara walked toward him quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee from the old saloon. For a moment, they just stared at the river, the same river where everything had once fallen apart. "You're leaving again, aren't you?" she asked softly. Jake glanced at her, eyes tired but gentle. "I was. But maybe. I'm done running." Clara knelt beside him, her voice trembling. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Jake." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But love ain't about deserving, Clara. It's about what's left when the dust settles." Tears welled in her eyes as she took his hand. "Then don't go. Stay, not for the past, but for what we could still be." Jake looked at her for a long moment, then tipped his hat with a half-smile. "All right, Miss Reeves. Guess this old outlaw's got one more reason to stick around." As the morning breeze swept across the valley, Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, her heart felt whole, not because the past was gone, but because she'd finally faced it. And there, by the river that once divided them, they began again.